to this interview, this is Attorney General Mark Brnovich. I want to welcome to the program, very interesting guy. He's a candidate for Senate out in Arizona. He's the current Attorney General, Mark Brnovich. Welcome to the program.
Oh, thank you for having me. Thanks so much, guys.
Listen, we've been hearing a lot about you out there. Obviously, a wide open primary race and a seat the Republicans absolutely have to have in order to get the majority back in the United States Senate in 2022. How are things going?
Well, things are going really well. I had never done polling, because I'm really fairly new to politics. I've never done polling before I started running for the Senate. So now, everyone tells you, you got to have a polling because donors and other people want to know how you're doing. So by an objective standard of polling, I consistently have a large double-digit lead. I have great name ID, and maybe by a subjective standard, when I talk to my mom and all of her friends, they're telling me I'm doing a great job, and they're all going to vote for me. So, I politically, or from the Senate side, everything's great. And I think that, once again, I think it's important. I grew up here in Arizona. It's important when we have candidates as conservatives that can articulate and defend our values, we win. And I remind folks all the time that even though people like Tom Steyer spent millions of dollars attacking me in 2018, I got more votes than Cinema or McSally. And so it's important right now. Mark Kelly is very beatable, but we need someone that understands Arizona and that can stand up to the onslaught that's coming from the far left.
So a lot of news was made last week and the governor confirming what everybody already knew, that he was not going to be running for Senate. Basically means that the field is pretty much set. And as you said, you seem to have had a lead in the polls up till now. What do you credit that to? Obviously your campaign, but you're a sitting attorney general. You've been pretty active in the state as well.
Yeah, well, I'd like to, low expectations. I think that's probably why, no, but in all seriousness, I grew up here in Arizona. I am a first generation American, and my parents lived through World War II. They lived through communism. And I always say that if your family has lived history, not just studied it, you have this unique appreciation for how fragile liberty and freedom is. And Ronald Reagan used to talk about the fact that it's never more than one generation away from extinction. So that's what's driven me in all of my career choices. There was being a gang prosecutor, a federal prosecutor. I was working at a place called the Goldwater Institute, writing, amicus briefs for fighting for property rights. And so when I got elected AG, I had never run or got elected for anything. And so as AG, I always said, I'm going to be the people's lawyer. I'm going to be the guy, the middle-class public school kid that stands up for people that don't have a voice. And so whether it's taking on, drug cartels or taking on, people engaged in human trafficking or, fighting companies that rip off consumers. I'm very proud of the fact that we have a record amount of restitution to Arizona victims. And so I have a record, and I think the fact that people know me, even when they don't always agree with me out there, they understand I'm a straight shooter. This is what he believes. I believe very strongly in federalism, the rule of law, and limited government. But at the same time, if you break the law, if you're a bad guy or bad gal and you break the law, we're going to come after you. There's got to be consequences.
Yep, no question about it. I think most of our listeners probably first heard your name when it was associated with court battles, basically, Supreme Court in particular. You've done a lot of work in that regard, suing the Obama administration, suing the Biden administration. I think your biggest, probably noteworthy win that people remember is the Obamacare issue.
Yeah, I am, just a quick anecdote or story I'm very proud of the fact that I've argued at the Supreme Court numerous times. I always say or joke that, I was a real lawyer, a real prosecutor, a litigator, before I became AG. So that makes me different than a lot of other people in government or politics or whatever.
You've done the job, is what you're saying.
Well, but more important, I'm going to tell you just a quick anecdote. So 2 weeks ago, I literally was arguing with the U.S. Supreme Court. We tried the Joe Biden administration, President Biden tried to withdraw the public charge rule. The public charge rule is a common sense statute that's been on the books for 100 years. Different administrations have promulgated rules as to how it should be interpreted. But it basically is that if you are here and you're a non-citizen, you have to be able to support yourself. Trump administration went through the rule and commenting process and said, you cannot be on welfare or public benefits for more than 1 year of your first 3 years here. common sense, what I call the de-incentivization, or we don't want to incentivize people coming here for the wrong reasons, right? And so we are a land of immigrants. We're not supposed to be the land of the welfare state, right? And so I just remember as a high school kid going to visit the Supreme Court, and you walk through and you kind of shuffle through the back, and they give you like, it's almost like being in a church or a synagogue where you got to like be quiet, and you're there, and it's like you're shuffling through, and there's so much like awe and respect for that institution. I remember seeing this John Marshall statue, and I guess if you were woke, you'd say a bunch of old dead white guy statutes right at the Supreme Court, but it was like this thing I was like totally in awe of. And then I'm thinking to myself, as I go up there and I put my legal pad down, getting ready for the justices to come in, they come in and they're like oye, oye, God bless the United States in this court. And, I look over and you've got Biden's Solicitor General, and the solicitors, his deputy solicitor, they wear those like, what do they call it? Evening suits or whatever, like the tuxedos, right? The penguin suits, right?
Right.
So they're there, and I kind of look over and I look at the justices who are coming in, and I thought to myself, what a country, man. It's like a cliche. I'm sitting there saying to myself, I grew up, my language in my home was Serbo-Croatian. Like I said, I'm first generation, a public school kid, and being in awe of this place. And here I am standing in front of these justices, looking over, and there's the President of the United States lawyer. I sued the President of the United States, and I'm not in jail. I haven't been arrested. I mean, it's like, it's crazy. Like, only in this country, it's a republic if we can keep it. And I'm so fortunate and blessed. And, even last year I argued, there's literally a case called Brnovichs v. DNC that dealt with election integrity, where we sued to defend election integrity laws. And I made the joke, I was making the joke with my oldest sister about this, is like, it's kind of crazy because I remember being in law school and you would like curse and you'd be so pissed at like these cases, like, how do you say that name? What do you do? And like the professor calls it and you're stumbling over the words. I'm like, there is a whole, no matter what happens in my life, there's going to be a whole generation of law students that are going to be like, how the hell do you pronounce it? What's this guy's name? And it's like,
oh my God, your last name.
Yes, I've got that legacy at a minimum. So I'm happy about that. But
I love that. Well, what do you think? What do you take away as your most important accomplishment before the court?
Before the court?
Yeah.
Not screwing up.
Finishing all your sentences and not splitting your pants.
I will tell you, it's so funny because like before the Brnovichs v. DNC argument, our lawyers and we, there's like all these DC lawyers and they're like they're all kind of freaked out because I'm not like part of that, like, solicitor, like I didn't go to Harvard, didn't go to Yale, all this stuff, and they've got a certain view of things. And I remember we did a moot court like 2 weeks before, and those guys were like, oh my God, they're freaking out. And then they joke around. It's almost like, Jack Johnson going to the Crossroads or whatever. They're like, I go home one weekend and I come back and it's like, oh my gosh, I know everything about all the election law cases. Like, how did you learn all this? And it's like, you learn to focus. It's almost like cramming for a test. And I was really honestly worried that I would say something just like really stupid, or that I would have one of those moments like, where just it's like, terrible in that moment. And so not screwing up was a big accomplishment.
Yeah, no, I hear that. It's an intimidating place for those of you who have not been in it. It's an intimidating place when you have justices staring down at you. You have all the opportunity to screw up if you want to. So let me ask you this, because you've been you've been running the campaign for a while. You've been out talking to a lot of voters. What do you think right now is motivating the conservative voters in Arizona more than anything else?
Well, I think the thing that concerns not only just conservative voters, but I think voters in general, other than maybe like the far left progressives, is security. I say it all comes back to security. Mm-hmm. So when you're talking to folks at your grocery store, or your mom's friends from church, or out at events, talking to people, it seems like there's like consistent themes. One is obviously what's going on in the border is crazy, and right. We have multiple lawsuits against the Biden administration. They decriminalize and incentivize that, and I think people worry about that impact. Not only record amount of fentanyl coming into this country, cartels seizing control of it, so that affects the security of people in their neighborhoods, physically. And then you think about security, like what I call economic security, where you talk to anyone nowadays, asked to pay for gas is record prices, and that impacts the cost of milk, the cost of meat, the cost of what you're putting in your kids' lunches. So there's this anxiety that people feel there's something wrong, and economically they worry like, oh my gosh, am I going to be able to, afford gas next week? And, I had someone come up to me saying that, waitress, my wife and I were out, and she said, I'm spending my whole first hour working just to pay my gas to get here. And so, people aren't stupid. They understand that. And I think that, even when it comes to election security, people want to have confidence in the election process and the election results. And so to me, it's all about security, whether it's personal security, whether it's economic security, or it's security, confidence in our institutions, and that they are indeed secure, and that there's not some sort of agenda that's being advanced by DOJ or anyone else.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And obviously that's been a big issue in Arizona, and we've all followed the various views of what happened there in 2020 and beyond. Is this, I mean, one of the big challenges that conservatives have had here over the last year and a half is how to box that up and with confidence proceed to the next, right? And obviously a lot of that work is being done by the Biden administration, as you said, with the terrible things that they've been doing to this country. But the other piece is getting our own knitting in order and making sure that we have conservatives turning out in droves and having faith and trust that those elections will, in fact, be satisfied. And so where do you think we are in that process in Arizona?
Well, we historically as a country have resolved our differences, through two primary methods in the Constitution, and that's by talking about them, using their First Amendment rights. We know the radical left is trying to, dox people and cancel people to stop that from happening. And the other way is through the ballot box. And so people have to have confidence in the process. And so we were just talking about Brnovichs v. DNC. I would submit to you and anyone listening to the podcast that no one did more for election integrity in 2020 than I did. So when the Democrats, the radical left, tried to extend ballot curing period in Arizona, I stopped. I went to federal court and stopped them. And in Pennsylvania, they didn't. And that's why you had some of the chaos in some of those places. When they tried to stop and put on hold our limitations on ballot harvesting, out of precinct voting, literally, that's why the cases are named Brnovichs v. DNC.
Yeah, right.
We went to the Supreme Court, and that opened up the door and the opportunity for other states like Georgia and other states to enact election integrity measures, which I think are important. And I think our side, as conservatives, the left has created this false, choice, dichotomy that somehow you either have to have secure elections or you have to have voter turnout. And the reality is they're not, antithesis. They're not the opposites of each other. And one of the things I love, going back to the Supreme Court, you talk about the moment, this probably would be my proudest moment, is that any courtroom, is that we're arguing in our briefs, we had put in there in 2004, there was a bipartisan commission that did a report on election integrity. And the co-author of that report said, the greatest threat to election integrity is ballot harvesting, third-party handling ballots. And I ask people like, do you know who said that? Do people know who wrote those words? The worst president in U.S. history, other than Biden's replaced that, right? It was James Earl Carter, right? Yeah. Jimmy Carter said that. So even 15 years ago, the left, the Democrats recognized the importance of election integrity and how that mattered to the process. And so we as conservatives, the process matters. How you do things do matter. And so as a result of that case, that allowed places like Georgia to pass, measures that protect the integrity process. And one of the things that I think our side doesn't do a good enough job of is pushing back when the left tries to set a narrative. So when Georgia started enacting those measures, they allowed the left, the classic Sal Alinsky, defining and demonizing your opponent. They let the left set the terms of that. And so what happened was people were talking, oh my gosh, they're eliminating this voting, they're doing this or that. And instead, Georgia and conservatives should have been like, well, wait a minute. New Jersey, you guys on the left made a big deal when New Jersey has 9 days early voting. Georgia has 18. Arizona has nearly a month. In places like Arizona, you have no excuse early voting. So same thing in Georgia. Where they don't have that is, drop boxes in places like Delaware. I mean, right. In the Northeast, you have to have, in Massachusetts, Connecticut, these other states, you have to have some bureaucrat approve whether you can vote, by mail. I mean, so the left is so hypocritical, and it's important for us to have the facts and the evidence to push back. And so it's important, I think, as we go forward. We've got an ongoing investigation into 2020. So, as a prosecutor, I'm always limited what I can say, but I can assure everyone, I realize how serious it is. And I also realize that we have to protect the integrity of the process. So, we all know what happened in 2020. So the key is, well, what are we going to do for voter verification? Like, when people do mail in their ballots, to ensure that it's the person returning it that's that person. So signature verification, voter ID laws, making sure that there's integrity in the process of keeping the ballots, and there's a chain of custody when those ballots are being counted. So there are things that we can and we should be doing, and those are the things I think we need to be talking about instead of running down rabbit holes that sometimes make us look non-serious about these issues, because this is a serious issue and it should be a serious process, and we need to understand that. But we can be conservative but not crazy.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear you say that, because that's exactly right. And there is a way of going about improving the chances of election integrity by taking proactive measures like you were talking about, rather than complaining about them after the fact. So no, I appreciate the work that you've done on that. Let me turn the page to COVID for a minute, because I'd be interested to get the sense in Arizona how this has played out. Judging from the Phoenix Open, looks like you guys have put that in the rearview mirror.
Yeah, and I'm very proud of the fact that we filed the first lawsuit in the country against the Biden administration when they tried to impose what we believed were unconstitutional and illegal, mandates when it came to vaccines. And it's funny, and this is the whole disingenuous of the left and even politics, even on some of my opponents in the primary, where I don't use notes. I know what I believe, and I speak from the heart and from my brain. Excuse me. And I was out at some event speaking for like an hour, talking about the constitutionality of vaccine mandates, why they were legal, why we shouldn't have them. And someone recorded, like, I got to some question, and they clipped like the last 18 seconds and they sent it to the local media. And so they're like, oh my gosh, Brnovich is questioning vaccine efficiency, whatever it was. And it wasn't true. What I literally said, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, but I am pro-Constitution. I always keep my Constitution with me. I am pro-Constitution. And where in the Constitution does it give the president the authority to have to inject something in your body? And I said, the stuff is all over the board, and I want to be careful so your podcast doesn't get canceled, because I'm not anti-science. I'm not anti-science, right? So, but
you're the least dangerous thing that's been on this program. I got to be honest.
Yeah. With you. Well, so I said, if you accept this premise, you open the door to all sorts of, under the guise of public health, the government doing all sorts of stuff. And so, they run a story, and my poor mom, who lived through World War II and communism, she loves her some Wheel of Fortune and Price is Right. And so the Wheel of Fortune's on at night here. It's on right for the local news. And they run this story right after Wheel of Fortune that they're like, they play that clip, and then they say, Brnovich wants to get people killed. And they have some doctor come on saying, oh my God, he's going to get people killed. And it's like, it's not true. So they take stuff out of context. And we had if I'm droning on, it's not me, but we had a press conference, and the police and fire unions locally actually joined in our lawsuit, because they as contractors, they don't want to have these mandates employees. And one of the reporters, the end of the press conference, we're all done with it. People can Google this, or not Google, I've sued them, but whatever, they can search it, right? Their search engine, right? The tech guys aren't fans of mine.
You're running out of people you haven't sued, Attorney General.
I know. I am never going to win the Mr. Congeniality Award, man. I think that's why that the cake eaters in D.C. don't like me, because they're like, oh my God, Brnovich is too independent. He's too much of a cowboy. People have said that. I'm like, I don't mind being a cowboy, man. It's our great Arizona tradition. But I literally, so we're at this press conference, this reporter who's a lefty, he's trying to trap me, and you can see the exchange. And so he's trying to ask me if I've been vaccinated. And I'm like, it's no one's business. When did our public health stuff become, or our private health information become public? And I asked him, I said, well, if you had an STD, and there's like, oh, and all the reporters get all mad, like, you kidding? I said, I was like, no. Once you accept the premise.
Hold on. You asked the reporter if he had an STD?
Oh yeah, you should see the clip, because I'm like, no. So he's like, and they're like, and all these other reporters, that's ridiculous. And they're so insulted by it. I'm like, no. Because if you accept the notion that the government or the guys of public health can require you to do something or inject something in your body, then, where does that end? In the 70s and 80s, we had sexual disease outbreaks in this country. And so does that mean if you're working at Boeing or a federal contractor, the federal government, Joe Biden, can tell you not to have sex with another human being in order for public health? I mean, if you're a defense contractor and you're out there for public health, that they're worried about like obesity and heart disease, can they tell you that you can't eat cheeseburgers and pizza anymore? I mean, seriously, that's what people need to understand. And I think our side as conservatives, it is important and incumbent on us to point out the absurdity of what the left wants to do and the logical conclusions or where ultimately that leads to. And that's what folks need to understand, especially the younger folks need to say, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, there's a reason why we have a constitution and government's powers are limited.
Yeah, I love that, by the way. I mean, just asking a reporter if he's got an STD is just like, that's great work. That's great work.
It did go viral, whatever you want to call it. So there's like 1 million views of it out there.
I love it. Okay, all right. So I got 3 big questions for you that all of our audience wants to know. The first one is, if you could plan your last meal on Earth, what would it be?
I tell you what, I make the joke that I've swallowed a lot of aggression along with a lot of pizza. And that's actually a John Candy line from Stripes. If people are old enough to remember Stripes, one of my all-time favorite movies.
Of course, yeah.
So it's got to be pizza. And there's a place in town here called Grimaldi's, and they're originally from New York. And I love those guys. It's great pizza, but I also love me some Chicago deep dish pizza too. So it would be pizza. I wouldn't have to worry about cholesterol or fat or anything. So yeah.
No, I think that's right. I'm glad you've gotten your eye on some good pizza joints, because when I was going to school in Arizona State, I don't remember pizza standing out as some of the best stuff they had there, but I don't really remember much about it anyway. So.
I'll tell you what, if you're old enough to remember, this is true. And I'm very proud of this. This is the kind of stuff that your political consultants say, oh my gosh, don't talk about that. But I'm very proud of the fact that the Dash Inn used to be this dive Mexican restaurant right up Arizona State that they've torn down now.
Yeah, I remember that. The Dash, yeah.
Well, I held the beer pitcher drinking record there for like 30 years. Like, I was the guy. So I got skills. I got ASU skills, as they say, ASU education.
Was that the place that was like penny pitchers until the first person had to go to the bathroom?
Oh, actually, it was not Penny, but the Cannery Row had something the Cannery Row, and I wasn't inducted into the Cannery Row Hall of Fame before they tore that place down too. So I got that going for me. So I don't know I don't know if McConnell's guys do like the shotgunning beers or anything, but I'll tell you what, I'm willing to be the champion of the Republican side on anything related to slamming beer. So. Well,
you're going to screw around and get the variety program in Arizona with a challenge like that, because that's just our game. I love it. All right. Number 2, this is, if you never got into public service at all, what do you think you'd be doing with your life?
You know what? I love music.
And you're like a big Grateful Dead guy, right?
I'm a huge Grateful Dead fan. In fact, the Grateful Dead is part of the inspiration for my political career, whatever. I always say that the Grateful Dead never used a set list. I tell people that you might hear me do Playing in the Band. It might be a 5-minute version or a 20-minute version. It depends on how Jerry Garcia's feeling. You know what I mean? And I used to tell that story in the campaign side that it'd be like, if I was out talking to someone, I'd be like, oh yeah, people call me like the Jerry Garcia of Arizona politics, but like some donors on some event, they're like, oh my God, he's a drug addict. I was like, no, like the freewheeling Jerry, so yeah, I'd like to think that I'd be in a band touring somewhere,
Yeah, that's a great answer. I don't think we've had a band touring somewhere, but that is definitely up there in terms of what you ought to be doing. I love that. All right. This is the third and final question. It goes into your sort of mentality of how you approach motives in life. And it's what goes to motivate you more, the thrill of victory or the agony of defeat. Let me explain it for a minute. The thrill of victory person is the glasses half full, sunny optimist charging up the hill, getting it done because they want to get it done. The agony of defeat person is somebody whose every setback in life they wear like a backpack, right? It's like the Michael Jordan figure who just vows never to repeat failure, and that's what motivates them. Where do you find yourself on the spectrum there?
Well, it's interesting you use that glass analogy, because I've joked before that I'm Eastern European, so when someone gives us a glass half full, we don't say the glass is half full or half empty. We say, why the hell did you put this in this glass? What's going on here? I don't want to drink this. I want to drink something else. No. So anyway, I will tell you this is that if you remember the Jimmy Connors, the tennis player.
Yeah.
One of the things I heard Jimmy Connors one time say is that he hates losing more than he likes winning.
Yeah.
And I think that as a prosecutor and, as the state's AG, I always tell people, in fact, when I hire new people, lawyers and everything else, that's because they say, we don't count success in terms of wins or losses or how many years someone gets to prison or settlements. We always say, has justice been done? when you're the government, you have to count success in terms of how justice has been done. I know sometimes that's difficult to quantify, but that to me is always the big, thing that we have to do when you're the government.
Mm-hmm.
Now, me in my personal life, look, I mean, I am a public school Eastern European where people still make fun of my last name and people can't pronounce it. And so when you said the Michael Jordan thing, there is always a chip on my shoulder because I will never, ever, I don't want to give anyone the satisfaction of saying they beat me, and I will do everything I can not to lose.
Yeah, and now you can go wander around law schools telling them how to pronounce your name too, by the way. So they've made you
No, I'm gonna be like the secret shopper, and I'll sit in the back of the courtroom, and then I'll be like, wait a minute, I think I know that. And then I'll pretend, hey, I heard this guy was great, and I think this is the way he pronounces his name, so.
You all should vote for that guy.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Attorney General, where do we find you? If our listeners want to help out, where do they get you?
My website is brnoforaz.com, BRNOFORAZ.com. And I will tell you, for full disclosure, and I've been on Hannity's radio show, he kind of makes fun of that website. He said it's the worst website in the history of politics. And one of my sisters like, why does Hannity always make fun of our name? And I was like, no, it's good because then people remember it, Brnovich and Brno. But if you actually type in markbforaz.com, you also will be directed to the website. But it's
you got multiple ways to get you.
And I will tell you, one of the things I'm proudest of, and I was involved in this design, I'm sure there's not, but this is the way, we actually just started this just today, whatever. We've got T-shirts on sale that look like Grateful Dead T-shirts that are called the Brno Tour. Like Dad used to sell like the Winter Tour, the Summer Tour.
Oh, yeah.
We've got the Brno 2022 Winter Tour shirts that just showed up on the website.
Nice. Very cool. All right. Well, listen, Attorney General Mark Brnovich, good luck out there. Keep us updated. Look forward to hearing from you here in the near future.
Thanks. Thank you very much.
Take care. So I guess